Hi everyone, welcome to the Human-Centered Design UAE Meetup. My name is Jonathan Steingiesser. I'm Innovation Services Lead at the Early Childhood Authority. Before we get started, huge thank you to Jack, sitting at the back, and Peter, our sponsors at the Specs. We've been going now for 11 and a half years. We started in Abu Dhabi, so it's always nice to come back to Abu Dhabi. At Caribou Coffee in May 2013 with my former manager and colleague, who I convinced to come. About 9 people RSVP and none of them came. But so thank you all for coming tonight. And since then, we've had our fair share of people changing the lights on ladders and ups and downs, but pandemic closed Abu Dhabi a little bit, and for, I think since December now, right, we've been coming back to Abu Dhabi regularly. It's nice to see some of our regulars here. And I'm really excited. This is, very much lifting the kind of talks we've done, and it's great to see that model's working, getting feedback from the market, and we've got a really great panel for you tonight. We are recording the session. Our sessions are on YouTube, so if you missed past ones, you've just joined, or if you have to run off, no worries. You can catch up on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram, HCD UAE, as well as Specs. Please tag us. Hi, welcome, have a seat. So you can continue, hopefully, the conversation. I always say if you're aspiring or if you're new or looking for work, this is a great way to make yourself stand out, as Tony told me. Write an article about tonight. With your own words, use ChatGPT, but make sure there's enough of your own voice in there, and post it. Unfortunately, the co-organizers can't be here, but there's a lot that happens behind the scenes. So big thank you to Nada Catral, Natalie, and Leopold. Some are traveling, doing conferences. It's always hard to get everyone, but they're here. I just want to do a quick plug for Leopold. He's written a book, co-authored a book. He's an amazing speaker, one of the best I've seen. And there's a QR code there if you're interested on learning ethical influence. So he has a certification in ethical influence from, I can never pronounce the Italian guy's name, Marcini. Maybe somebody knows who this is, the guru, the guy who basically invented what ethical influence means. And he teaches courses, he coaches folks in the US, here, and he's doing a talk in Europe at the moment. Last plug, I promise. Next week, if you're in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, we have a lot of people coming tonight from Dubai, so thank you, Tony, Batsy, and Shahaf. This is amazing. Normally people go that way, they don't come this way, right? So this is great. If you want to go back the other way, next week we've got 2 really great speakers, Melissa and Afsa, talking about service design, and Melissa's going to talk about designing for impact. So 2 really great speakers, both done, Melissa's been in the region for a long time, done a lot of management consulting work with design, so it's going to be interesting. And without further ado, tonight, and if I almost got it right, this was just by chance, maybe you want to swap seats even. No, it's for sure. I just want you to introduce yourself. Big round of applause. Thank you to our Shahaf, you want to do a quick intro about yourself, your role, where you're from, how long you've been in the region?
Absolutely. So first, it's a great pleasure to be here, with the 3 of you on the stage, and thanks everyone for coming over and sharing your chocolate flavor. So I'm Shahaf. I'm Chief Product Officer over here in one of the cyber security companies, working closely with the government, helping them to solve crimes on a daily basis when it comes to digital data. My experience back in Israel was originally with engineering, so I started engineering, rolled up the ladder, and then at a certain point I understood that I'm falling in love with the problem and not with the solution. So I switched over to product management, and I've been doing it for the last 16 years, working in telecom, working in AI, working with government, working in cybersecurity. So very wide background. Over here for almost a year. Really like the place, really like the country itself, but also the fact that the product and the design practice here is growing. And I just can't see, you know, how all of us can help and contribute to its growth in the next few years. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation we're going to have today. Thank you for coming over.
Thank you, Shahaf. Tony.
So, can everyone hear okay?
Yeah.
Good? Yeah. Excellent. So, thank you. I'm Tony Pagliacco. I spent the last 20 somewhat years essentially just solving problems and creating experiences across a number of different industries. I currently serve as the Senior Vice President of Product at Aldar, at the Aldar Group. So, responsible working with retail, education, residential, commercial, the entire plethora, building out the practice, the operating model, and then essentially getting us into not being sort of like the cooks at McDonald's, but instead becoming chefs of really amazing digital products. I moved here 4 years ago from the US. Prior to here, I was the head of product at Boeing for the 777 and 787 digital factories. In the gaming industry for a number of years for Magic the Gathering, Dungeons and Dragons. So as you can see, many different industries, but at the core of it, it's about really just creating that connection with our users and obviously getting to give us money too. But you know, like I said, the last couple of years I've been in Saudi, and I just recently came back, so now I'm in Abu Dhabi now full time. And like you said earlier, I absolutely love the region, I love the vibe, and I love what the opportunities are here. So thank you again.
Nice, welcome to Batsy.
Amazing. Hey everyone, Batsy. I have been a designer all my life, and it's if I'm not designing, I'm designing, I always say. I'm now heading design at a bank in Abu Dhabi, and I've essentially seen my career develop from advertising to product design, mostly within the financial services. So you could say, I guess my niche is product design for financial services. And I'm excited to have this chat.
Awesome. Welcome. So this is not going to be your usual panel. That's very boring and we kind of ask everyone the same question. One thing we did early on, and it's a little bit lost that vibe in Dubai, mostly thanks to Pete and Jack, which is so big now. It's a good problem to have. Is when the group is smaller like this, you can have a conversation. You can participate. You can design the meetup spontaneously, in the moment, like we will tonight. So if you have an opinion, a question, if you disagree, I've also said to the panel, they can interview each other. I'm not moderating, I'm going to give plenty of opinions, don't worry about that. Hopefully some of them will be based on research and facts, but no promises. And we will include you. It's still Abu Dhabi, UAE though, so let's be civil and, you know, be kind to each other. But
Oh, you didn't tell me about that.
but it's okay to disagree. We don't have to agree on everything, right? So with that, I want to start talking about the evolution of the industry. I think as much as I want to be honest that, as you said, it is an emerging market, product and design is not where it is in more mature markets. Let's be honest, let's not sugarcoat that. But on the other hand, it has evolved. Like I said, I came 11 years ago, had a gap, and then came back. In that 4-year gap from 2015 to 2019, I saw incredible growth around product and design in terms of the titles, the roles, what was actually happening inside of organizations. I want to start with Batsy, who's probably been here a little bit longer. Batsy's ready, I told him to bring his gloves.
Yeah.
Have you seen, and Batsy and I didn't directly know each other, but I hired 2 designers who worked with Batsy, who knew him very well.
Were they talking about me?
Oh, they did.
Oh yeah?
Not all good things, but mostly good things.
Mostly good things.
5 years ago,
Yeah.
no, 4.5, sorry, I hired 2 designers from Emirates and BD who were working with Batsy at the time. In that 5 or more, have you seen a change? What is in your view, the current state of design in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, the region?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I feel like it's an important question as well. Because we need to always take stock of where we are and where we want to be as an industry. And I feel like a lot of it's within our own hands as designers to not just sit on the sidelines and let business and organizations dictate where design goes within those organizations. But it's really important for us to take our destiny to our own hands. And the advantage of seeing, because I've worked with a lot of designers, the two that you mentioned were amazing designers. And right now, design comes from every single aspect of life. So I've product designers I've worked with that were architects, some were accountants, some were engineers, some were cabin crew, etc. And they all bring very different perspectives. But what that does, though, from an organization point of view, where, for example, like I said, I worked in financial services a lot, and you're working with people that have been in that industry for decades. And all of a sudden, they're in a room designing a journey with a cabin crew or an architect or someone who used to play sport for a living, right? And they have to hear what you're saying, trust you with their product, and for us, the app that we design every day is the single source of driver of growth within the organization. So it's a lot of trust that they give us. And if we're going to show value and grow as an industry, I really do believe it's within our own hands. And I've seen designers start to do it. I've seen design leaders being hired from abroad with that experience of how to champion design in organizations. They're bringing those skills to the table. But I feel like it's still not enough. I feel like designers have to do more to show who they are as people and what value they can bring, which is why I'm going to give me crap for LinkedIn. This is why I do what I do on LinkedIn. I'm trying to show that design is not just pixel pushing and about drawing shapes and colors. We're layered as people, and it's a very layered industry as well. We can provide value from so many different perspectives.
Tony?
You know, I'm going to try and keep it focused because my ADD will send me in like 9 different directions right now, because I agree with what you're saying. I think that there's one perspective, which I'm sure we'll touch on later, is that fundamentally I feel that product and design are at a crossroads right now in the UAE. Far ahead of, I would say, other countries in the region. But we're at a crossroads for a number of different reasons. Like I said, that'll be a question for later. I think that the challenge isn't about, is it evolving? It's more along the lines of, how are we interacting with those in our companies?
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, is that design and product have to work hand in hand, because there is a design element, and then product helps to quantify that in terms of talking to the customers, what works, what doesn't work, how do they feel about it. But what you'll find is that in a lot of companies, it's one person who's making the decision about if the design is good. And it's like, why am I going to make a decision that's going to impact 30, 50, 100,000 users from one person with a title, where in essence we really should be going out and saying, look, we talked to 100 people,
Yes.
85 hate it, even if you love it, 85 hate it. Those are the ones who actually give us the job security. And so when we look at that, it's you know, in its totality, I think it's a cultural issue that needs to be focused on not only bottom up, but also top down. And you know, when you look at it, it's like, how many are parents here? Okay, so resonate with me here for a second, is that when you have a child, at the beginning you have to take care of it all the time, and eventually it learns to walk, and it's going to fall, it's going to hurt itself, but eventually it can walk and take care of itself. And then pretty soon, when it gets older, it takes all your money and oh no, that's my son, sorry. But no, it eventually starts taking care of itself, and this is like exactly like a product. When you launch a product, it goes through that same maturity cycle to where it eventually hits a few $1 million revenue or whatever, what have you. We need to look at the industry as a product and talk to the people that we're interacting with, understand what they're expecting and what we can give them, and then utilizing that information to help define who we are to our colleagues.
Shahaf, what's your view on that in terms of, I've experienced a similar challenge to what Tony described. You can do all the research, all the design, all the product, but then that decision is made by someone in some very fancy office that undercuts it and says, make it pink. Have you experienced that in your time in the
Yeah.
UAE, and how do you combat that?
Yeah, quite often. So quite often there is a decision maker that is eventually knows what he's doing and he's taking the decision, and then you need to follow. I think one of the things that we need to realize, and I think what we're actually doing good as product and design people, is to actually understand people's needs. So sometimes when someone is saying, and maybe this is my provocative Israeli way of doing things, sometimes when someone is saying something, this is what I want, you really need to understand what they really want. I'm not sure, I'll give an example from my world. When my shareholder tell me, I want something green, for example, why do you want it green? Maybe there are different ways to get you to the green that you want. So this is really important in terms of combating it. It's not actually combating it, it's actually helping the shareholders to get to where they want, but in a way that is more product-led or design-led. So it's not easy all the time, and eventually, as employees, and I said it all over, you're still reporting to the CEO, the shareholder. If the shareholder says something, we will march that way. However, I think the ability to share the wide perspective, the ability, to show, okay, this is what we want, this is how we can get over there, and have this conversation, which I think people over here are very logical. So they will not do things just because they said. They want to win, they want to succeed, they want to grow companies. So I think having those discussions with the shareholders, with the CEO, or whomever it is that you're interfacing is so important, and position you as someone that can help growing the team.
But in that interaction that you're talking about, and this is from my side, is that we in the design and the product space, we need to get, I fundamentally believe we need to grow more of a backbone, because we need to be able to push back. Half the time, in my experience at any company I've been at, executives don't know what they want. Sometimes they want it just because someone else has it. And we end up being far more reactive. I'm not sure in the design space as much, but I know in the product space, is that reactivity is a constant challenge. And you're not thinking ahead, you're thinking about what to do now. And for me, it's like I always use the example of when your car breaks down, you go to the mechanic. And the mechanic looks it over and tells you it'll take 3 days and cost 1,000 dirhams. And you don't go back to the mechanic and you're like, no, I want it today for 50 dirhams. No, you've respected the estimates of the mechanic because they're the professional, they know that space, and you know that they're gonna give you what you want for the quality that you're gonna pay. So I don't think we put enough stock in ourselves to actually have that same mentality that we are the mechanics of our respective verticals, our respective trades. Why do we let ourselves then get pushed into these corners? And then again, it goes back to the product culture, or I'm trying not to pigeonhole just product culture, but that's how I refer to it as, that product-led culture of having that respect, because then that's when you start seeing the real positive impact of having these teams.
And how do you create it in organizations that don't have it, that you come into?
First and foremost is trust. If I spent my first month at Aldar literally just building trust with people, because they don't know me, I don't know them. Am I going to be one who's going to mess things up? Am I going to be sticking their nose in their business? And I had to make it very clear up front that no, I asked, do I know what you do? No. Okay, well, do you know what I do? No. Okay, well, then I'm not going to stick my nose in your business. You know what I mean? It's a very fair way of doing it. But to build that trust, now you have allies to support in the vision that you want to go forward. When building out the how we were going to evolve product management, we had to look very closely at building something and then collaborating to refine it, to crystallize it, and then bring it together. So it wasn't, this is Tony's solution. We can now stand together and say, this is our solution. This is what we're going to get behind. We may not all love it, but at least we can respect and support it. And then now it's much easier to go into situations like that with allies and armed locked than it is to be one person trying to speak for a bunch.
Betsy, what about you? What about from the design sense?
Yeah.
As you come into an
Yeah.
organization, how do you change that mindset from just deliver this Patsy because it looks cool to
I think I've
something that's evidence based?
Yeah, I think I've been quite fortunate because a lot of the organizations I've worked for were ready for design to come in and shake things up. Because they realized that when you look at a typical organization, people that work there,
So banking, the oldest, most
Yeah.
undisrupted industry, big ugly banks are ready for disruption.
the ones I've been a part of, absolutely.
Okay.
Because they recognize that the medium they're operating on is foreign. Like if you talk branches, they know how to execute. They know how to meet the customer at their need. They know how to operationalize that whole structure. When it comes to the app, it's completely foreign to them. Because all of a sudden now, the experience their customers expect is the experience they're having on platforms that aren't even banking related. And this is a discussion that we often have where a stakeholder will look at your design and try to challenge it. And we have to tell them that your customer is spending 80% of their time on social media. And these patterns have been established for the past decade on social media. They're expected experiences now on the platform that they're using within your organization. And those discussions, they actually find out that there's a lot of gap in knowledge between how to execute on digital that we can bring to the table, and they understand how to make money. And we come together from that perspective. And one of the superpowers I found designers tend to have is the art of storytelling. And if you're going to pitch your ideas or show your design to senior stakeholders, you need to know how to speak to them, because each one requires a different language, a different PowerPoint deck, or keynote in my case. And you present it in a way that they've only ever seen from McKinsey and Accenture that they're paying millions of dirhams for, right? All of a sudden, this skill set is in-house, and that it's light bulbs lighting up in their heads, because all of a sudden they've got people that are working at these agencies in-house and they can utilize this.
Johnny, you want to jump?
I literally I share that same synopsis. It's about knowing your audience. And if we look at the history in the country, is that there was a lot of companies, let's look at Dubai first, that maybe 5-10 years ago were started really small, and now in that time they're massive. Take your Talabats, take your Kareems, etc. And a lot of these companies were started with government support, or from a big business sense of where they brought in these management consultants to help get them started from a strategy or operating design side.
Yeah.
So they're used to that language.
Yeah.
So for me, when I'm going in and presenting ideas to a different generation of leadership, I frequently do that. I will bring my McKinsey PowerPoint out and build my presentation around it, because that's what they're used to and they understand it.
That's what they respect.
It's a different message. However, that's just me playing chess.
Yeah.
Okay? It's about the next generation of leaders that come after that concern me. And that's where I think that we are setting them up. When I said about the things earlier, is that we need to set that future generation up for success, or else we're going to keep repeating the cycle and we won't have that evolution.
Shahaf, one thing, we had a rehearsal, by the way. It was a lot of fun. Yes, Axel.
Yeah, just one question. I just want to bounce back on what Tony said. Talking about evolution and the next generation of leadership that would be the person or the person that will consume whatever you are trying to tell them or whatever you are trying to, bear with me. So you mentioned that you have this concern about pulling your McKinsey deck and then trying to present whatever you have to present and thinking about the future generation. So that's why I'm right now. The question or the thing that I want to get into is like, is this way, putting those McKinsey or Accenture type of templates and just presenting a certain way that just like these bulbs, is not broken? So is there a need to change something? Because you mentioned the word evolution. So is there a need to got this evolution related to this specific task, which is convincing the stakeholders about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, in my example, number one is that I'm getting my foot in the door by presenting in the McKinsey presentation, so to speak. I'm getting my foot in the door and building that trust, which means that then later on when I bring something maybe more controversial or something different to the table, I've already built that relationship that's right there for that. But the evolution, I really think, is when you've got a business whose foundation is based on that relationship with consultants, so to speak, what ends up happening is that you get buried you get socially constructed into a project mindset about deliverables, billable hours, gates, and all of these things, which go against every principle of agility or fluidity that you want to have. So you need to start deconstructing that project mindset, and is where that next generation that I speak about is that they've got the background in that agile space, but there's a high percentage that I'm seeing that are at some point just giving up and saying, you know what, I'm just gonna do my project charter and I'm gonna get my paycheck and we're still gonna make money and it's gonna be great. And they lose that creative side that actually drives the passion and gets them excited to go to work. I mean, for me, the thing I love about what I do is that I know for a fact that there's a whiteboard of digital space that we have to build new products on. And there's people who are working 2 jobs to buy one of our houses. There's people putting their kids in our schools. They're coming here to start a new life, and I get to be a part of helping to impact that. And that's something that gets me fired up beyond belief. So if you think I'm gonna let like a project gate or a go, no go committee or something get in my way, maybe right now, well, I'm still in my first 3 or 4 months. But the long-term plan is to break that down because.
You know they're watching this, right?
You know what? I'm from Boston. I don't care. I'll tell you how it is.
No, but it's actually true. So a few points. First of all, about building that trust. So we all have a background and we have a vision on what we would like to build and how products should look like. But you need to immerse yourself into the organization. So one of your ways is, for example, was to use the McKinsey template, to create more rapport and go into it. But eventually, you're heading to a place that will make things in the right way and build the right products and the right mindset. So this is one point that I wanted to.
But for the record,
yeah,
it wasn't really a McKinsey template. We're giving a lot of free
Yeah.
advertising. It was just a general consultant style template. Okay?
sorry, Ben and the rest. Yeah, no offense over there. But I do think in terms of the project management, even if you will look into the job descriptions that product managers over here, some of them are really project manager and not product manager, where there's a huge difference between the two. Can we do project management? Yeah, for sure. Is that what this country and what companies needs to move to the next steps to create value to customers, the same value that Tony was expressing? It's definitely need to be a different thinking. So there needs to be a change in mindset, and I think when, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, when Tony was talking about the next leadership, is about all of us over here having the right conversations now with the leaders, presenting them the right product mindset. So when the next leader will come over, they will already grow together with us. We already have our mindset, and then our next generation, those people that will sit here 10 years from now, will say, yeah, it's easy peasy, and they're already thinking the way that I wanted to think.
One challenge, yes.
Sorry, I have a question back to Tony. I want to circle a little bit back. We've mentioned a lot of trust in relationships, and I know that's super important in our day-to-day work. As somebody that's new to a company, how do you build trust effectively or efficiently? Because within the first month or 2, you kind of want to show people that they've made the right choice in hiring you. So, how do you do that?
You're good, man. Don't worry.
Tony, can I just add to that question? Because it's something we're going to talk about and we spoke about at our rehearsal. From a culture perspective and managing multicultural teams and managing up to multicultural managers and executives, is that trust that you're building, do you use your same methodology for every one, or Does the McKinsey one depend on where the person is from, or management consultant, not McKinsey? Sorry, no problem. Just to add to that question, does that make sense?
It does, but I think I want to just tackle that one first, the first part of it, because I think one part is it depends what role you're in, okay? I've seen a lot of people under like maybe the group product manager and below, like senior product managers and L4 product managers, get very excited when they start in a new role and they're like a bull in a china shop. And they want to show right away that, oh, look, you know, you did the right thing. Look at all the stuff I'm doing. And what they're really doing is unintentionally causing chaos. You know how I know that is because I've done that for a number of years myself. And I've been able to learn from those mistakes to understand that all I'm doing by doing that is actually building distrust because they don't know what I'm going to do next. So that trust aspect is huge, where if you're able to go in early and ask questions, ask more questions, show you're vulnerable, admit where you're weak, admit where you're strong, and having those authentic conversations, knowing who you're working with, that's going to build the trust that will help you month, 3, 4, 5, 6. You don't have to get out of the mindset of having to prove yourself that you made the right choice hiring me. You went through the interview process. You had the resumes. You answered the questions. You did the case study. Whatever it is, you did it. So that you crossed one bridge. Now you have to cross the second bridge, which is showing through your actions, through the personifying the values that you brought to the table, that you can actually hit the ground running. With the I don't want to ramble, but the multicultural aspect of it, I think that is an interesting question because it's multifaceted. I think just to keep it simple is that you have to understand that if you're working upwards, you have to learn how to build and identify cultural norms to be able to work with those above you in the organizational structure. And I hate the fact that we've been socially constructed to think that my boss, I working up, because even today in a workshop we had, someone introduced, this is Tony, he's my boss, and I said, no, teammate. That's very important. That's part of getting out of this mindset. But for me, when I moved here, I started learning Arabic. Not with any ulterior motive, it was a respect issue. But in Saudi, when they found out that I could speak quasi-okay, somewhat, maybe childlike Arabic, it got me instant trust with everyone. They were like, oh, okay, that's awesome. But also understanding, when I brought this presentation and one of the team members was like, oh, Tony, that's amazing. And I was like, nailed it. And then someone brought out a turkey sandwich to lunch, and the same person was like, turkey, that's amazing. I was like, okay, well apparently amazing means something different here than it does in the US, because the turkey sandwich wasn't that amazing. So I think it's just about understanding how do you interact and have that level of empathy to understand where people are coming from. Because for me, when I speak Arabic, I can speak it, but I get incredibly nervous, incredibly panic attacked almost, but I try and gut through it. And for me, it was thinking about all the times in the US when I was working with people whose English, they were learning English probably the way I was learning Arabic. And now I can only imagine the intense pressure they were feeling. So that's what living in their shoes is, living in the people's shoes, your user shoes, whatever is going to get you there.
Yes.
Just want to recommend the book because
Sure.
I was at the same situation when I started working at Shopify. To me, the book, the first 90 days was recommended. It's a really good book to ramp up at an organization. It splits up your first 90 days into 3 parts, 30, 60, and 90. Then it tells you the first 30 days, you just build relationships, get to know the people, get to know the processes. Then at 60 days, you start, you talk to leadership, you understand what are the strategic directions, what do they want to achieve. And then at the 90 days, you have enough trust where you can say, okay, now I'm starting to restructure some the organizational things, the design team, hiring here, and ramping up on research, etc. That's number one. The second one is about different cultures, cultural aspects. There's a good book called The Culture Map.
Yes, we have been speaking about it. I'm listening to it now on my
Yeah.
commute from the back.
So you gave me yesterday?
Yeah, the one I sent you
It's
to.
a very good book because it really, because I've been working with a lot of different cultures as well. Living in Germany as a Turkish background, I work with US companies and they have worked with Russians, I work with Arabs, I work with everyone, you know, and this book is very good in pinpointing what are the nuances of in behavior of these different cultures and languages and so on. So
Yeah, I'm up to the trust chapter actually, Tony, which is interesting because trust is established in different ways by different cultures.
yeah.
Highly recommended the culture map. I'm just going to switch topics a little bit because one thing we really wanted to talk about, which is Tony's idea, but I'm not going to ask Tony because he's been holding the microphone.
Yeah.
It's not karaoke night, Tony. I'm going to ask Batsy. Abu Dhabi versus Dubai. It was Tony's idea. Very controversial issue. How would you compare the state of product and design? You've now worked for two very big banks. One of them I also had a short stint in that you say is an amazing, adaptable place. I would argue with you, but it's not debate
It's a
night.
lifetime.
We're not going to debate it. How would you compare the two? Also, from people you know, you're an influential guy, especially on LinkedIn. Some interesting stuff. You have to read Betsy stuff on LinkedIn. Are we on par? Is it the same? Is one better than the other? It's okay. Like, not many people watch our YouTube, I can promise you, and they're not going to watch 30 minutes into the recording.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about what you say.
Yeah, I was trying to say, so a lot of the feedback I would give is from financial
That's
services
okay.
side, right?
From a
banking side.
financial side.
Yeah, and the problem with that industry is everyone knows everyone, everyone's worked everywhere.
So you're
you
saying the
find
same people are in
the same
both?
people jump around, yeah, just like I have, right?
So you're
I've
saying
worked
it's
at
the same,
3 or 4
basically?
banks. It's essentially, the baseline is the same. Where I see the light at the end of the tunnel is the people that they're hiring now at senior management are external, right?
Where?
So
In
they're,
Abu Dhabi, Dubai, both?
I would say both. Mostly Abu Dhabi because that's where I'm working. And a lot of the people that are being relocated now come from experiences in Europe, Saudi, and sometimes America. And the reason they're hiring those people is because they want different perspectives. They want them to come and shake up because they're starting to realize now, especially banks, that they cannot continue doing things the way they've always done. And if you keep hiring the same people, you're going to keep getting the same results. That's why even myself, probably about 2 years ago, I took stock of who I was, and I started to realize that what made me special was the fact that I was African. And my African perspective gave me something that no one else in the organization had, because it said, well, besides the Egyptians, which are African, I had an upbringing that was very humanist, communal, interconnected, that was very family oriented, that was very respectful of my elders. And so when I walk into a room, the way I interact with the people I'm with is very different to how I've seen other people interact when they walk into a room. And I leaned into that a little bit, and that's when my career really changed. When I started to show up and present a different perspective, a different way of life, a different way of communicating, a different way of treating the people around me. And I think that's what essentially has brought value to whatever company I've worked. And I've seen that's not just from an African perspective, that's just from any perspective you can think of. What's actually changing the industry now is those different perspectives, those different temperaments, the nuances, the cultural nuances we're talking about. They're starting to make a difference.
Okay. So, same question.
Question, just
Yeah, sure.
probably towards Batsy as well. The trend in Australia is that design has been really well embraced and really well established, specifically in the banking industry, so much so that it sucks up all the talent.
Right.
Would you say the same applies here? Or is the banking industry more mature than other industries, or is it level?
God, no.
So, from a
Sorry to be so harsh, but I did spend my shortest job at a bank
Yes.
Batsy works in.
Yes.
And I can tell you from the largest bank in the country with 50 designers, unfortunately, those were the worst designers I ever worked in. And nothing against them personally,
Sorry,
it's
guys.
not their fault, sorry if that's you, but it's again, it's the management and the lack of knowing what good looks like. So if you're going to outsource or try to get agencies to just bring in the cheapest designer possible at the highest markup possible, and you just want someone to execute and not to think,
Yeah.
then you're not going to get
Surprisingly, they have 50
that quality.
because that's the right approach, and you know banks.
Yeah, so
in Australia
I was
have
impressed.
a
100,
big
right?
design
Yeah,
department,
yeah.
but critical
I'll
thinking
give you
is
two
important.
examples of why I would say the banking industry is a little bit more mature from how much respect they give to design. So when I was, my first head of design job as head of design, I was brought in to change the design they had before the bank launched, because it was done by a consultancy, and to shape the way forward for what the bank was going to be from a visual and experience point of view. And I did that, and I caught the CEO at the elevators about a month into my stint there, and he was like, "Batsy, I'm actually finally proud of what we built. Like, we're launching in like 4 months, and as the CEO, I'm actually proud of what we have now to bring to the market."
How long did the launch actually take at that bank?
So I joined.
Years?
In
Come on, Betsy, be
I joined
honest.
in November.
This isn't Dubai.
No.
Perception is reality now.
Yeah, I
We
joined
said
in
we were going to be
November.
honest.
Yes, I'll be honest. So I joined in November, it launched in February. So the amount of time I had to make an impact was very short. But because I'd worked at places where I knew how to deliver and how to structure the squads to enable to deliver that change, we were able to make a big impact. So that's one example. And the other example is when a stakeholder saw something we'd done, and is like, I knew something was wrong with this journey, I just didn't know what it was. But now that I've seen your execution of it, I can see the value that the design teams bring, because they're solving problems from a digital experience point of view that they can't even fathom how to solve.
And have you worked outside of the banking industry in the UAE?
Yes, agency. Yeah,
Okay.
so I
But you haven't worked for product companies,
No.
like Kareem Property
No,
Finder.
no.
I don't mean to pick on Betsy, but I just want to establish that I came 5 years ago and I joined Property Finder. My manager at the time, who's currently CPO at Talabat, who's an amazing speaker, by the way, worked at Seattle, for example. And at the time, it was on the back of raising $120 million. They were hiring talent. And again, at the time, with the right product leader, we were doing research in Saudi, I went, in Egypt, and the team that I was able to build, the budgets I had, was to find the best talent at the same level as Australia, or at least aspire to. Now, that level, honestly, is not the same. It was very hard to find talent, very hard to convince people to move to this country. So I just want to agree to disagree with Betsy, but my point is, two of the designers I hired, who were great designers, had worked with Betsy.
They're the best designers I've ever worked with.
And those designers were so traumatized from working at a large bank, honestly, that it took over 6 months for them to come out of this trauma and to be able to say, it's okay, you can have an opinion. You want to do research, you disagree, you challenge. Similar style to the way we work in Australia. I worked at MYOB, for example, in Melbourne, accounting software. That does not exist at a bank, Betsy. I just want to, so yes, maybe there's some amazing visual design work happening, but the people around you, the system around you, when it's so large and so against product and against design, makes it kind of challenging. But I just want to bring it back, because I'm really interested in Tony's view on Abu Dhabi versus Dubai, because your experience has been very different. You've worked in very different industries. How would you compare the two in terms of the quality or the state of product design?
Well, I mean, fundamentally, Dubai and Abu Dhabi are two different animals. Dubai is the Burj Khalifa. Abu Dhabi is the Louvre. Okay, two different kinds of visitors, two kinds of different tourism, composition of people who live there. I think that the more over the last years I've seen more and more is that I feel that the explosion of the companies in Dubai has highlighted the areas where they need to rectify more. Not saying they're not good, it's just more. And I think that the emergence of a more granular focused startup culture in Abu Dhabi, especially in the financial sector with government, but also you get G42 here, which is a monster powerhouse doing amazing things. And so it's not like there's no credibility on there. I'm saying is that there are two different sort of worlds in how they operate. I think that, like many things, Abu Dhabi is in the lucky position to learn from the mistakes or the challenges that have been maybe experienced over the growth in Dubai, which is good. But also at the same time, it's also planting your flag more to get more recognized for like, hey, you know, we're not just the cousin to the south. We're actually the ones who are running the ship in a lot of, you know, steering the ship in a lot of situations, and getting that out there.
Yeah, and one part about Dubai, we also need to remember that a large part of the answer about Abu Dhabi is also defense oriented, where it's a completely different
Industry.
completely different game. One of the greatest things over here related to defense or to government is the fact that this government really wants to be innovative, create new things and everything. So a lot of times what do you see is a lot of solutions looking for a problem, which is kind of sometimes some of the mindset that you need to work within the Abu Dhabi government space is just to help figure out how this brilliant technology that was created over here fits the market, and kind of along that way build your way up to creating a product-led mindset while still having assets that someone invested in and wants to see them come to fruition. So it's kind of also.
How do you reverse engineer that? How do you go from, because I have that challenge as well. I mean, I would agree with Tony. I think I've only been 6 months now back working in Abu Dhabi, but it's been an amazing experience. I think the work being done here from a government perspective is years ahead, not only of Dubai, but of many places in the world. Like at the Early Childhood Authority, I'm sure other areas too.
I'm actually Team Abu Dhabi as well. I didn't answer the question.
It's unfortunate, I think, that some of these things aren't scaled to the UAE or even to the region, but I think that's the plan, right, largely. But back to my question, often I think there's this hunger to embrace AI, technology, some idea from some other market, and I have to kind of bring people back to say, that's great, let's talk about 3.0, 4.0, 5, but let's just do a retrospective and let's align on the problem first. Before, and if we can agree on the problem, because we all have different perspectives, then we do a future state. Have you encountered that?
I think it needs to happen in parallel, against, based on my humble experience in the current industry that I'm working. First, I will go back into the leadership of this country, which I must respect. One of the things that I love over here is that they think big and long term. And really, like think about it, even building the Burj Khalifa. It's an amazing achievement. So
That Abu Dhabi didn't happen.
What?
That Abu Dhabi didn't happen.
That I would have made happen. But also
Team Abu Dhabi.
and why it is exciting for us, because sometimes I'm taking it now back to my career in Israel, so sometimes you don't have this kind of funding to think that big. Eventually you need to be financial aware, so you might build things on the way, and you will not think that big. So here they know what they want to achieve, and they will achieve it as much time as it will take. So why am I saying that? Because all of the technologies eventually are meant to serve that purpose. They will not stop on the way. So what you can do is first, try to embrace the technology that was brought into, see how you can correlate it to the actual pain, and try to build the next version of it, because they will not stop. The vision over there, they will not stop. If they need, electric
The train
cars,
is moving.
yeah, the train is moving. So jump on the train, figure out the pains while working to what you have now, and build the next version of it that is more aligned with what the customer wants. That's my experience, working within the government, but I think it might be very different, in the
Tony, how do you go from solution to let's focus on the problem?
So, I mean,
That whole drive of just make it amazing, Tony. I want to see holograms, people buying houses.
that's
It's
a
coming.
good question. I think to maybe give some perspective, when I moved here, I read My Vision by Haida Sheikh Maktoum. He talks about the history of Dubai. And he wrote this book in 2012. And he said that by 2021, the UAE would have someone in space. In 2021, there was an Emirati in space. Needless to say, that was the first time probably anywhere a project was delivered on time. But I use that as an example because there was a vision of what the outcome was to be, and they focused all of their effort into making that happen. It wasn't about KPIs, it wasn't about what someone wanted, it wasn't about hierarchy of, well, manager has to go to the senior manager, who has to go to the director, who has to go to the VP has to ask their kid, the kid checks on Instagram and then gets back and then the decision's made. I think that what you asked earlier about AI and how do we utilize that, and then you asked about how do we get to that solution space to do something amazing. Number one is having a very clear way to how do you work in the problem space. And over the years, I've come to appreciate more and more that, like I said earlier, design and product have to be very close to get through that, because there are areas where product brings expertise that design won't have to the same level. And there's areas that product won't have that design crushes them. But they're different kinds of experiences. They're different kinds of design. There's technical design, there's experience design, there's graphic, but then there's also the product design part, not just the product of what does the product look like, but how does the product act? How does the product engage? And I think the other portion of that is we need to stop getting hooked on buzzwords and dropping them into everything. A few years ago, it was agile. Then it was data science. Everyone needed a data scientist. Everyone needed data science teams. Where did those data science teams go? Because why are we all now hiring people for GPT? And if I hear another person in any company be like, oh, I want to make a insert blank GPT for, to solve something, that's just like another, in 2 or 3 years, it'll be something new. It'll be a new buzzword. So it's not about the flavor of the moment. It's really about what do we have at our disposal to have us work better, to work more effectively.
Yes.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, there are buzzwords for every couple of years. How do you expect us as designers to deal with that? Like, upper management comes to you and, work on AI, work on ML, work on this thing. How do we tell them, we obviously have to get aligned with the market, but it's not always in line with our product. So how do we deal with that?
Betsy, how do you deal with it?
I just look right over. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's understanding. So before you're quick to push back, understand what results they want at the end, right? Because there's a thing we do at Deep where we get requirements.
You said it, you weren't supposed to say it.
No, I can say it. I just can't write it next to my name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry, they won't watch 45 minutes.
Yeah. So like you get business requirements, and the business requirement obviously has an output at the end, right? They have this feature, like you're saying, could be machine learning, could be a GPT, and then at the end they want a specific result. It's up to you as the designer to say, okay, I can deliver this, but it might not be what you want, right? It might be a different way of delivering the same result. A great example I always give was when I was back in agency, and as an agency, client gives you a brief and you have to answer the brief creatively, right? So sometimes clients would say, okay, we have an event, we want brochures. Design some brochures, print some brochures. And the agency then says, we had a framework we used to create ideate solutions. And the agency would say, okay, what do you actually want to achieve? And the answer was always exposure, increase our market share, create some buzz. And then we then tell them, fine, you hired us as your trusted advisors, let us show you the best way of creating that outcome. It's definitely not flies, it's definitely not brochures.
Totally.
Do you have product managers at your company?
No, we're product owners.
I mean, my point is that, no, the reason why I looked was because, you know, in terms of like the question that you asked and how do you push back on those sort of things, is, you know, in my mind, my first response was, well, I would partner with my product on the side and refer to them, like, you know, that's a good idea. Let's see if it's a measurable idea. Let's see if there's a need for it. Let's see if there's something for it. But the reason why I pushed back was because you took it and just said, design's gonna take this all the way across the goal line. And that's where we need to better work together to make that, because there'll be times where I will, if we were working together, which I think would be amazing at, by the way, is that
Tony's got some openings.
is that I could lean where I know where you would bring the credibility to the statement I'm trying to get across, and vice versa. So it's about also, and I brought this up actually a couple weeks ago, was knowing the people on your team and the resources, that you don't have to be the best at everything. You don't have to be territorial. You can't talk BS about building a team culture and using more buzzwords like empowered and empathy and all those. Those are all great and dandy. But unless you're actively putting it into play and putting your money where your mouth is, then you're just blabbing different buzzwords.
No, you're right. So a key distinction that maybe clarification that I would make is my approach is never design focused. It's always digital focused. So we work with product owners, data scientists, right? We work with solutions architects and our engineers.
But there's no product managers in any single bank in this country. A product manager, as you know it by the definition of Marty Keegan's product manager. So that, just going back to my, sorry, because it did need a sore spot, it was the shortest job I ever had in my life. It was a big trigger. When you don't have mature product, you don't have mature design. That's a fact. I think we can all agree with that.
Yeah.
So we cannot say, if we don't have that trio, that we've got the best to create that solution, in my view at least.
Yeah.
Yes.
The problem I see a lot of times is that design reports into product.
Agreed, that's a problem.
We don't.
You don't.
Because they don't have product. We don't have of course.
No, we do have product. Product works hand in hand with
Product
design.
owners in banks in this country are project managers. They are not anywhere near even a Marty Keegan definition of a product owner.
You're right, and what's nice,
Yes,
if I come back to the studies, yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's why I mentioned with leadership that's coming in now, is rewiring those product owners and those people working in product, that to make them understand that you're not just a delivery man, right? You're not just here to deliver what the business wants.
Yes.
You need to take ownership of not only the product, but the outcomes of the product and the experience you're building together with the design team, the engineering teams.
But they need, the other missing element, to use a word Tony hates just now, he said, is empowered. They need to be given autonomy and empowerment, and not to be in an extremely hierarchical culture where they're just reporting to the next project manager and next project manager and next project manager. That will take time. I don't see banking changing like that, and the executives know exactly, because they're making so much money, from my experience. The metric is not let's improve customers' lives. It's not let's ship faster. It's not customer satisfaction. The metric is I have built an empire and I will tell you what to do. It's opinion city, like we spoke about earlier. How do we change that?
John?
Yes.
I think sometimes designers get pigeonholed into, I'm a graphic designer, I'm a UX UI designer, I'm a service designer. I think it's a lot more versatile than that. So in a large organisation like a bank, for example, somebody might be, I'm a product owner, I have to stay here, I can't go into the UI side because that's not in my swim lane. But if you take a great UX designer, they could, in theory go in for 1 to 2 months and operate as a business analyst, write user stories, fully understand how that product would work. In service design, UX designer equally could come in and look at all of the front stage items from the customer journeys, touch points, empathy mapping to operate there. So if as a designer you're able to step out and understand other people's perspectives.
But that's the key challenge, right? So I'm talking about, and sorry to bash banks, but in the
I'm here to defend.
But yeah, I know you're defending them. They're the best places to work. Highly recommend. But the problem is if you're in an environment that doesn't let you do that, because I totally agree with you. Designers should go beyond and should be, if they think they're equal and not reporting the product, they should be acting as equals, stepping up, and if there's no one doing go-to-market, then maybe they need to do some of that.
But there you go again, talking about the reporting to. Reporting to.
I didn't say it.
No.
I
You
said-
said.
There was a second part to that as well. I
Oh,
didn't
go.
want to. So the reporting thing is not always the problem. The problem is that product falls prey to business requirements, as she said. It's like bring AI into it.
Yeah.
But this is in the end a tool, a solution to something they don't know why they need it. So the designer is the one who actually has to push back by asking why do you need that, and understand the why all of a sudden you. I'll give you an example. Banking apps, okay? I have experienced in the last couple of years banking apps switched over to fire all the customer service team and bring in chatbots. And it's a horrible decision in my opinion. Because you want to talk to a real person when you're dealing with bank issues. So I can imagine that at a certain point there was a decision from leadership to say, we have to probably save money, there's this cool new innovation, we bring in chatbots, and people can deal with chatbots. And that's something where I see is it's short-term thinking. It's not thinking about the user value in the end, but about like what is the short-term gain of that. That's the first part. The second part is I forgot the second part. Back to you.
Yeah, so again, I think it all goes back to the problem. You said I think that part of this trio, it's a product, the design, and tech, is to push back on just I need AI. AI is technology.
Yeah.
Why do you need it? What are you trying to achieve? Maybe even in the example that you shared, where you're not creating the best user experience at the end, but this is what the business needed at this point of time. Maybe it was the right decision to make for the business.
Yeah.
But those discussions needs to happen and needs to happen together as a team. I always tell my team, I don't know everything.
But as you said, it's a trifecta: product, tech, and design.
Yeah.
We had this trifecta model at Shopify, where you are allies. So at one point, Shopify decided to fire, or not to fire, but to move UX research into a strategic part, and said the team, the cross-functional team, is responsible of research now. What happened is that designers and product managers teamed up to digest all the UX research they were doing and organizing, and the quantitative and qualitative research insights, and that built this maturity inside the team where you had allies with you as a designer.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I think, where we have to get is, I've recently worked on a project, and the product manager I worked with, she became my ally at one point, because we were together interviewing the users and heard the insights.
I think no, go ahead.
No,
go ahead. No,
no,
please, go ahead. I'm gonna rant.
I'll touch a little bit on what you said. And to answer your
You're gonna push my
question,
buttons more, aren't you? Go ahead.
the next thing that's going to come out of my mouth is what I think Tony's been trying to put across is that design is not the be all and end all, right? So to your point, if you get a requirement where as designers you're supposed to execute something, you need to be 10 steps ahead of them, right? Like Tony mentioned, you need to play chess. You need to have built relationships with engineering, products, so you can band up, and if you all agree that this is not the right execution or not the right feature, it's not up to you to go and push back. It's up to all of you to push back. And I can give you a good example of where we did this, where senior stakeholders wanted a web view in our app. And for them, it made sense because what they wanted to achieve is fast deliverables, right? We don't need to release a version of the app each and every time we want to change anything. You can just push it through a web view. And we all knew that that's not a great experience. And we managed to come together. Technical put their case forward, design put their case forward, from an experience point of view, product put their case forward. And we put up a unified front that then presented the alternative, not just saying we can't do it, but we presented an alternative. So that's one way you can do it. And I hope this is what you've been trying to say.
So,
No, 100%.
In no way was I discounting saying that design isn't the be all end all. What it was more was about we all have different areas of where different parts of the process where someone should be orchestrating and the other should be supporting, and vice versa. What's your background again? Was it design?
Right.
Yeah, I can tell, because you obviously blame the product person for the feature development. I think that's fair though, because here's why, is that besides the fact that we don't do a good job of explaining to the business what we do, and you mentioned about pigeonholing, this design, that design, I think product people are guilty of that a lot. I think that in the maturity of their careers, they begin to understand that design can be many different things. There's technical design, there's feature design, there's customer persona design, a whole bunch of elements, and no one owns any one part of it. It's really about who can do it the best, and who can drive that out. But when you talk about like the Spotify model, Shopify model,
Try that.
but it goes back to culture.
Yeah.
It goes back to culture. It's about having that team atmosphere to do those together. Because the example I use a lot is that when you talk about these product people who just take features and crank them out one after another, they're essentially just making cheeseburgers at McDonald's. Where in essence we need to, I'll speak from the product perspective, is that we need to be very fine 3-star chefs. Where there's one aspect building the experience of the restaurant, there's one building the menu, there's one building what the smell is when you enter the restaurant, how you're greeted, how everything, the entire end, but it all comes down to the first bite. And that's what I've been telling a lot of other people, is that first digital bite. When someone tries a product or an app that we build, I want that first bite to be so delicious that everything before it enhances it to that moment. And now it's got to become part of their routine, their life, or something like that. And you know as well as I do, if who else is a foodie? I'm a foodie, I won't lie. But you know when you take that first bite, no matter what's happened before that, you know right away if you're going back or not.
So, yes.
How do you convince people to change when they already had success in the past? And it's a proven network like financial, but you know you can do something better. So I've had a same situation where I was in a company, but they've been very successful. They did things very questionable, but it delivers results. Like the dollars are here, and they can prove to the board like this working. And then they hire someone like me, obviously from UK or whatever. And we try to explain to them, it's not because you've done in the past that you actually want to keep working. What's your approach to actually challenge this mindset?
So the first thing is I will play to the chess, leadership's egos, desires, wants, whatever you want to call it. Because, especially I think in the region, is that there's such a burning desire for success that it's got to be better than everything else. And I always point to the iPod. The iPod was great. However, once the iPhone came, it disappeared. And that's when I tell people, it's like we have to think of what's the evolution of the next way of doing things. And if you were just to constantly do something the rest of your life the same exact way and never tried something new or never took a shot, I could easily just say you're too reserved and you're too guarded against change. You're resistant to change and you're part of the problem. And there's different ways to go about it. Mine are probably not the most polite or friendly ways sometimes, but it's your audience. If you can have that honest conversation, that's fine. I just think it's a matter of opening people's mind to understand the art of the possible.
But I do want to say, if it's working and it generates the revenue, the value to the customer, you know, it doesn't require. It's not. Okay. So I think this is what you need to add.
Yeah, I just want to add, because I've had that often, and people sometimes say, like to your point earlier, Jonathan, but I can't go outside my swim lane. I can't do research if I'm not given the ability to. And I think even talking to one customer, if you're in an organization that doesn't talk to customers, for example, and they say it's working, but like you say, maybe it's them just patting themselves on the back, then bringing in, yes, maybe you need to go a little bit beyond your job or do it on the weekend or do it after hours or whatever, but I spoke to a couple of customers. This is what I learned. Can I speak to more? Can you come watch this video? This is them struggling with our product. It's not easy, I'm not saying it is, especially in these hierarchical organizations, but I think just doing it is often what's worked for me. But like Tony, I've put a lot of risk into it. It's not always a success because you then, you know.
I'm usually right like a year ago, but I also realized like this.
You work here in Abu Dhabi?
No, I work in Dubai.
In Dubai.
I also realized there's this like very like monopoly mindset, right?
Yeah.
Once you're the first of the market or all the market shares, you don't have to be good because people still are music. You just like the
True.
options.
Bats
right?
is living.
And I feel like banks is changing, but like there's some some services like they can be better, but because they have like monopoly, they just like become
It goes to the culture of experimentation.
Yes.
You have to be able to build a valid hypothesis to identify what are good areas for A/B testing or trying new things. Because the minute you stop, you sit on what you've got, you're immediately in second place, and you're done. And then you're trying to fight and get that space back. So I mean, it's like you need to look at it, or I feel that it needs to be looked at as we talked about building continuous learning. That's so key, not just for us, but for the leaderships, for the people that we're bringing in as graduates up and down the ladder. You can never stop learning, or else you're just going to fall behind.
Another great book, by the way, on continuous learning.
My book?
Not your book, but Kami's.
Oh.
Yes.
So related to like performance issues and issues around psychological safety, which traumatized the designers that Jonathan worked with, have you got any examples where you were able to influence KPIs to drive the behaviours that are necessary for success in a project, so that instead of people experiencing tension and competition between the trifect or the departments, everyone has these KPIs that they're working towards together, so that facilitates better collaboration, instills, generates, fosters the psychological safety that people need in order to speak up or take necessary risks.
OKRs, have you introduced them anywhere?
I would say for me, this is like one of the most important things, because at least based on my belief, this is how we are driving things forward. You set the KPI, whether it is a long-term KPI, it's the KPI for the year, or a KPI for the quarter, whatever we want to call it, and then let the teams think how we achieve that. Sometimes when you are not doing it right, and you see it across the executive suite, then you see people working toward different goals, and then you have your sales running this way, your product going this way. So this is really key, and this is what I like, about my job, being in the C-suite is to create those collaborations and alignment. But I think what you are saying is the most critical thing, this based on my perspective.
It's about driving behaviours.
About driving behaviors, because again, it also, you can reflect this to the problem that we are trying to solve. This is the problem, these are the kind of KPIs that we are trying to achieve. Now there are many ways to do it. We will experiment, we will go this way, it will fail, we'll go that way, it will fail, but eventually we'll figure out the way to get to the point that we want. So
I hate KPIs. I hate KPIs because the number. If you're like me and you're a gamer, I'm gonna figure out how to game that system in a heartbeat. Like we want to get this things done, okay, I'll figure a way to beat that. But give me an outcome, like increase engagement by 10%, or something. Then now I have to put all my focus into achieving that quantifiable area. Versus, if you want to give, if I want to, this is a true story. 2 weeks ago, I met someone at a strategy event. And we were talking about the, did you start? Yeah, I started a while back, We talked a little bit. And I said, my KPIs are, I want our competitors, I want them, how many minutes they spend each week in their stand-ups talking about the stuff that we're doing that they're not able to do. And turns out it was one of the group CEOs who I was talking to. Explains the look he gave me, but it was, that's a KPI that I could deal with. But for me, I'm looking at the outcome and driving away. If you're in a company that's fenced you in to use KPIs for now, it goes to how do you help shape those KPIs to be something that's valuable.
Exactly. I'm not to it. I work for a company where one of my targets was, 10% increase in customer satisfaction. But I had very, very little agency over that in my position, and so I just felt sort of very deflated. But I think if you word, like say outcome, KPI, whatever you call it, again it comes back to defining the problem and what you hope to achieve, and then that's what should inspire that.
But it's all in how you frame it also, because if you look, I did not know on LinkedIn that I was friends with so many serial VCs and serial investors and serial entrepreneurs. I could literally just walk in and give you all 5 terms right now and be like, yep, I just started 32 startups today. I'm a serial investor. Or I just started 10 startups while we were talking and I just closed them all because they failed. But I'm a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But on paper it might look good. It's about how you frame it to the team.
Yeah.
Have you been looking at Betsy's LinkedIn?
Huh?
What did I do?
Sorry,
Are you
Betsy.
serial something?
He's the 1,000-hour man. Well,
Yes.
tell us about the 1,000 hours.
We can get into that.
Yeah.
10,000, isn't it?
10,000, sorry, 1,000 something. No.
10,000.
10,000.
Yeah, so this might be a little bit off topic.
No,
but
it's fun.
I'll try and frame it in the perspective of everything we've been talking about. So what I found valuable is coming back to the point I made about designers coming from different places. Is there was this narrative around unicorn designers or designers who can, or generalists, let me put it that way. Designers that were generalists are not as good as designers that are specialists.
Which one are you?
I am very much a generalist.
Really?
Yes.
I thought that was like visual UI.
No, so I
design
studied,
systems.
so I come from a computer science background.
Oh,
Yeah, I started coding.
that's programming.
That's coding, yeah, program.
Is that part of the
Software.
unicorn?
It is, because I learned a lot of ways to systematically solve problems,
Okay.
right? So the way you approach problem solving when you code is very different to how you approach problem solving as a designer. So when you're in an organization where you need to talk to people that are very logical, pragmatic, they're not the free-spirited creatives we are, you need to be able to, it comes back to know your audience, speak their language. Being a generalist allows you to have empathy, like what Tony was saying, with everyone that you're dealing with in an organization. So I can speak to engineers and meet them at their level. I can speak to people in business, because I've run my own business for 5 years. I did it and I've been there. I can speak to designers because I've been a designer all my life. So I can meet people where they are, and that's what the post was about, where I've done 10,000 hours of those things because I did code, I ran a business, I've been a designer all my life, and that's equipped me to meet people where they are and have success as a designer, because I can then, coming back to making friends, influencing people, I can actually help bring value in a way, from a design perspective, in a way that they can appreciate.
But wait, what about research, service design? Is that part of our unicorn?
So, well, you can't be a jack of all trades, right? You can't do everything. I was speaking from my perspective.
Right.
For the things I've focused on in my career.
So these are different unicorns.
These are different things. These are different things. Because to your point, we don't do research. We don't have service designers in every organization. Those are things
but
that
we
are
can. So in Australia, for example, we are not masters of everything. I don't believe unicorns do exist, but I think I agree with you. You can, and we didn't have an MYOB, for example, service designer as a title. But if the job called for it, for example, I worked on the ugly back-end operations side of this software company for a period of time and moved around. Then yes, you needed to practice service design. It was a tool, but you pulled in. You did have specialists in certain areas. But but it was an environment that allowed you to step outside of your lane, as you were saying, and to partner with people who are not even got designer as a title, but they know the organization and they bring in different departments, different swim lanes. And yes, we had a very mature product management with mature product managers and hierarchy. And that's a good segue just to one other topic that we want to talk before we run out of time. Just on individual contributors in product management and in design versus managers in product management. Something we spoke about, was it yesterday? We met?
It was yesterday.
Oh my God, it's been an insane 2 days. Felt like it was a week.
Felt like,
Yeah.
Tony, can you tell us a little bit about that? Because we do have a lot of product managers in the room.
Yeah. I got to just touch on one thing you said about the
Sure.
jack of all trades real quick. I think that for me, I've always viewed product that you do have to be a jack of all trades. In my opinion, there's like maybe 12 to 15 skills that make up a product manager. And you're never going to be a 10 at all of them. If you average out to a 7, I'd be happy. Because the areas that you're a 2, I can help you get better at those. Not that much, I can help you get the upskilling, the training for it, the understanding for it. I think that the emphasis more is on the attitude and the character of the person versus what actual skill set, because when you go into the hiring where you're hiring people because you have to have an MBA or you have to do this, you have to do that, that's old school Amazon style thinking. Now it's going to be more, now that I consider all resumes to be garbage because of ChatGPT, to be fair, I will be very selective in when I'm interviewing, because I'll just go into, I hate to say it this way, but to break people. Because if you're going to put this fancy thing on your bullet point because ChatGPT said it was optimized, then I'm going to go deep on it. I'm going to really expose you. Yeah, I'm going to expose you.
Yeah.
Thank you. But to small answer that, but two is out here, we don't have pathways and careers for individual contributors. Having been blessed working in Seattle for a number of years, we get Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, Starbucks, Boeing, etc. You could make a career as a principal product manager, senior principal product manager in the IC space. I know some at Amazon who've been doing it for over 15 years, making more than directors and senior directors because they love what they do. There are other people who love going the management route of leading teams and growing culture and things like that. Out here, it seems like every product pathway is like, okay, I need to be a senior, then a group, then a director, and then a head of product, and a CPO. Head of product, which by the way is a position like that just came out of nowhere a few years ago. It means so many things in many different countries, it's nuts. But like, I think that is an opportunity that we have, and maybe specifically here in Abu Dhabi, to build that lane for people who do enjoy the individual contributor role to make a full-time career out of it.
What about in Israel, Shahaf? Do you have both? Because Israel is known for product management. I know Marty Keegan speaks about it a lot. He actually did a talk in Dubai years ago, a workshop and he said if you're looking for great product managers,
Yeah,
Israel
so
is where you go. Do you have those two, IC and
not very much for product management.
people manager?
For engineering more. So I think it's more system Israel, it's more fundamental in engineering that you can take both paths, but in product management, not to the extent that Tony is talking about. Eventually, also in Israel, the companies are not that huge, in a sense. So probably the biggest product organization will probably be, let's say, 50, 60, 100 people. So, and this is like one. I think it's a small one. If you look into the global companies that are out there. So, unless you're working for a global company, like,
No, but yeah, I'm talking about global companies. Maybe started there, and there's many startups, and then gone on to the US and are, and then later maybe bought by
so
somebody
global
else.
companies,
Waze, for
yeah.
example, that we all use. Like these global companies, I'm sure they have.
Yeah, in global
they have those
companies,
tracks.
it's a similar practice also all over the world. They don't change it just because they come over.
Okay. And what about South Africa, Betsy? Is that where you spent before the UAE most of your career?
Most of my career was
Zimbabwe.
yeah, South Africa I did 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the? We'll wrap it up shortly.
It's more what you described, where it's individual contributor going on to leadership, going on to management.
Right.
That's typically the track. As an IC, there's very little room to stay in IC.
As a
and-
principal product designer or a principal
Correct.
product manager.
Correct. To stay in that lane for 15 years, you'll have very little growth. And I doubt you'll be very fulfilled working in those markets.
We do have them in Australia. We do have.
I was going to say, like, the CDO role, I think in Australia there's only been 4 or 5 chief design officers, and they've all been banks. So I'm curious to know for this region, again, like, and obviously I'm speaking purely design, not product, but what is the zenith here in the UAE with the design?
Yeah, that's a good question.
The titles are a bit
CDO
funny here
exists.
because we have chief design officers
Yeah,
of
they exist.
tiny startups where the
Yeah.
guy's like
Yeah.
barely out of his
Everyone's a
nappies
C-suite.
and
Yeah,
quickly
I think
changes
they only
titles.
exist in startups, correct. So larger organizations, design typically reports to digital. So the top would be your CDO, would be the top guy. So you
Or
can't
product.
have a chief design officer because it doesn't make sense within the construct of those roles.
So in your Talabat, Kareem, Property Finder, they report into product. So the highest you'd go is director or head slash
Head
director.
like director, yeah.
There's a job opening at Alba, I saw VP of design.
Tony's hiring, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, see,
There is, yes.
But design, as we know, my Alba people here, can mean different
Many
things
things.
because
Different
it could be
design.
designing a community, a house.
Yeah, that word design is hard in this country when you look for a job, by the way.
Why we have to
Yeah.
educate our people on what we do.
And also associate director for product development. Associate director for product development also is one of those.
Yeah.
It's funny we say that because a few years ago I switched on LinkedIn notifications for head of design roles in the UAE.
Got all this construction.
And I get 2 product design or digital design related. Everything else is architecture, interior design. So even LinkedIn doesn't know what we do and doesn't feed the right. It's crazy.
I do. Before we close, I've been too kind to all of our recruiters. There's quite a few in the house, and I'm going to pick on you. You know who you are. I do want to ask you, Harry, wherever you are.
Why did you ghost me now? You didn't, I'm joking.
The difference between Abu Dhabi and Dubai. All of you have worked in both those markets. Like, do you see the quality of the understanding from your clients, government versus private, like startups in both? Is it the same?
I think it's a fascinating question that you asked earlier on about Abu Dhabi versus Dubai. We're 1 hour apart from each other, right? So we're UAE together, and I think you could look at Shoreditch in London compared to Canary Wharf, right? Shoreditch where all the creative shops are, where all your art directors and the snazzy designers are. Canary Wharf where your suited and booted bankers are. together it's London,
Grazie.
right? Together it's London.
Look at to you.
Together it's London, and I think we've got to think of the UAE more rather than a Dubai versus an Abu Dhabi divide. I think you've got obviously big players in Abu Dhabi that distill a lot of their investments, like a G42, for example, like government entities that are doing some really, really strong work in innovation. I think in Dubai, like you say, it's a little bit more creative if you're looking at sort of the Burj Khalifa versus the Louvre, sort of argument as well. So in terms of differences from a design perspective, I'd say that both cities have equal opportunities. You guys have obviously worked in both regions. I think that you can pick a business in Dubai and compare it to another business in Dubai. Pick a business in Dubai and compare it to a business in Abu Dhabi. I don't think that actually there's too much of a difference in terms of both cities.
Anyone else? I'm not going to pick on those who don't like the public speak because I don't I just want to be cruel to that.
A question back at you though, Jonathan.
Yes.
It's to Batsy and Jonathan predominantly. It's design. I was having a bit of a keyboard warrior debate on LinkedIn earlier this week with a product leader from a big product-led business actually in the UAE. His post stated that he would rather hire a designer with average Figma skills over a designer that's commercially savvy.
It wasn't this guy.
Because
you did that Figma thing recently. That was quite controversial.
I was interested to get your thoughts on that. I don't know whether or not it was put out there for clickbait. If it was, he certainly did a good job on it. But I thought that was a really interesting perspective to say that a commercially savvy designer would be more preferable than excuse my language, a shit hot designer. And I was interested to gather your thoughts on that. And my response to that was that there's a gap in leadership within design. That your head of design is commercially savvy, because I think the job of a head of design is to empower designers to do what they're good at and manage to design. Therefore, is there an argument actually now that designers should be more commercially savvy, or do you agree that a head of design should be the savvy commercial person that then can feed into business, but also empower his designers or her designers to do their job?
Great question.
Very
Can
good
you
question.
explain what commercially savvy?
Can you explain what commercially savvy
Yeah, let me
is?
ask him on LinkedIn. I think that
We can explain it, it's fine.
I think, yeah.
I mean, I said the point, but what I think what he meant is you want to understand the business context.
Yeah.
So like measuring, like if you have design, you can measure if it increases conversion, if it has like ideas, all that sort of stuff. Probably the same values we craft like the key beautifully and physically, but we can't put like that like.
That's you want to take it first?
Sure. Yes, Figma is a tool, right? So if he says he prefers commercially savvy versus can use Figma, I would tend to agree. Because Figma is just a tool. Tomorrow it could be a different tool, right? But what you're trying to say, what he's probably trying to say is a designer who can create business outcomes regardless of the tool. Yes, that's very valuable, I would say.
So you would rather hire a commercially savvy in inverted commas?
So speaking from my own experience, right? So in order to, if you're saying, because you spoke a little bit about how this head of design's role is to be commercially savvy, and then the people, his designers, are just there to design. What I found is as you transition from a designer to head of design, how can you make that transition if you didn't prove yourself to be commercially savvy in the first place? So I think it starts off as a designer. The way we've been talking about adding value, knowing your audience, proving how valuable design is within an organization, the way you do that is by understanding what the business values and showing how design can deliver that value. And you can't just do that if you're focused on design systems and Figma and Double Diamond and all these. You need to understand where's the business going. Look at our I used to read annual reports. Understand what the business cares about and frame your design objectives, your design practice, like why you do user testing. Because one of the business objectives is XYZ.
You're absolutely right on that. You're actually talking about two different stages of a designer's career. So that the savviness comes from the more experience and more exposure, the more industries you work on. So that question of I'd rather hire a commercially savvy over a big barriers, like that's literally a senior versus a junior.
So, great question, Harry. And just to bring it back kind of full circle into what Tony was saying earlier as well. From my experience, we are at a crossroads. That's what Tony was saying. For design, I can't speak for product because I've worked with product. I've experienced, and I said to Tony, we didn't get into this, but from my experience in the companies I've been in, Property Finder, Omnipresent, which is a fully remote UK startup, very different, fully remote global companies in terms of maturity, far more. And not only the pandemic, but also like some of us were talking about the rush of delivery in Dubai. I've had experience in organizations that have gone backwards in terms of design and product maturity,
Yeah, for sure.
not forwards.
Yeah.
And some of that challenge, I think, is the saturation of design. Everybody's a designer. Design teams have grown too big in some areas. We don't translate as well as Betsy articulates what we do. I know I've given you a hard time, but Betsy's done a really good transformation
You haven't given me a
from
hard
being.
This is child's play. Seriously.
It's all for entertainment. But my point is, we are drilling into designers and we're teaching them also in your general assemblies or wherever they're learning that there's a rule book and it is McDonald's and it's A, B, and C. And they think I have to do A, B, and C, I have to be a Figma warrior. And that is design. So no, that is not design. And even if you're a junior, if I'm mentoring you or if Betsy is, we're not going to tell you just to stick in Figma and stay in your lane, to your point.
Yeah.
We're going to tell you to get out of the building and talk to customers.
Yeah.
And if your product manager isn't doing it, then you need to give them, she or he, a very hard time and say, I want to get out of the building and I want you to come with me. We need to say when we join companies, I want to join the sales team and just learn and watch and do ethnography. I want to just observe, I want to listen, to Tony's point. My first 30 days, there's another great book, not only the one you mentioned, that's not only about your first 90 days, it's about your job doesn't start on day one when you're getting paid. The job starts as soon as you've accepted, or even if you don't have a contract, but you kind of have that agreement, you start as soon as possible. And you kind of pretend like you're doing your old job, but you're really starting your new job. And the more lead up you have to that day one, the more successful you are. And to Tony's point, do that research early. And don't go in saying, I have all the answers and here's the vision and whatever. Listen, build relationships, and yes, be commercial. Commercial acumen is actually on the career growth framework we created at MYOB that I've carried with me. And that's what's missing in our industry. It's having a commercial career growth framework of saying what is a product designer, what is a product manager, that we all agree to, and we have a world body that says this is what great looks like. And companies need to have the badge of that one company. But in product and design, we're evolving industries, we don't have a world standard, sadly. So we have.
That's why I love the companies that just have the term general manager. No, the
General manager product.
The GM role. No, not a product.
Oh, no problem.
Just a GM role. It could be for a product, but that GM is the one who leads the team, who leads the strategic vision, and can be sort of the person standing in front of the team, defending them, so they can do what they do great. And it doesn't matter if they're what their background is, and they're not being pigeonholed into that. And then I think it's sort of a Microsoft thing that they do the GM type of role. But I've found that it's good because then you end up getting more diversity to those leadership positions.
So final points. How are we going to make the world a better place? Unicorns.
AI.
Shahaf, you come from the startup nation. The UAE is aspiring to be one. How do we get there? You're seeing positives. You're hopeful for the future. Final tips.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all about us. And, I think we are all professional over here. We know what the product and design means. It's all about creating value and showing how you're solving for the problem itself. I think this is the path that we need to work all together in our companies and establish this culture. And it will just come. I'm sure. With the passion over here of the leadership, and with the passion of the people and the quality of the people, I don't see it not achieving its success.
Nice. Betsy, final words.
Final words.
takeaways for everyone who's want to go back to their company and do a little bit more research, maybe get out of the building.
Yeah. I started looking at the future of design since ChatGPT came out. And speaking of LinkedIn, I wrote a post probably a few days ago asking designers if they felt threatened with AI. And the overwhelming response, pretty much all of them who commented said, no, I'm not threatened. And that worries me. Because that tells me that we're living in a bubble and we're not keeping abreast of just how exponentially AI is disrupting our lives. And for plugging books, I'll plug my own.
Wait for this. Wow.
Final words, right? And that's why I tried to approach design in two ways. So the first way is the human way, the humanity, right? The community. And the other way is how do we actually, on the ground, build digital products. And I feel like a lot of the frameworks that where we're approaching design from miss the human part. And I love that we've been talking about relationships the whole night. Like, you need to build relationships wherever you're working. Because when you build relationships, not only do you become a better person, but you become a much better designer. Because you understand everyone well, not everyone, but you understand the different departments in your organization. And I keep saying, understand how to give them value. And the only way you can do that is to work on your soft skills, work on your own internal development, work on your family, which is your design team, work on your community, which is your digital department, and work on your interconnectedness that department has with all the other departments. Forget design, work on that aspect, and whatever disruption occurs in our lives as designers, you are protected because you're within a community that's also getting disrupted, and you'll move together forward. And that's what the book I wrote is about.
Read Betsy's book.
Amen.
Tony, final words, tips, takeaways. Where to next?
I see a lot of similarity in terms of the same conversation and product about do we feel threatened by AI? And I actually resoundingly say no, because I look at it as just part of the natural evolution of tools that are at my disposal now to help me do things easier. I'll share a secret with you. Don't tell my son this. My son's back in the US, he's 22, so it's okay.
He's my age?
Thank you. Yeah, I was 10 when I had him, okay? So, young looking. But one thing I'm generally bad at because of the time difference is messaging him. Say, hey buddy, how you doing? I love you. How's it going? Stuff like that. So I literally thought of a way of how can I take this problem and automate it. So I created a Google sheet with about a couple of hundred rows of, hey bud, just thinking of you, how you doing, what's going on, etc. And I built this into my Apple shortcuts that every other day it will pick a time between, say, 9 a.m. and 3 p.m., which is in the night. I mean, I'm sorry, in the day, which is their evening. And it will it'll pick one random message and send it to them. And what it does is the next time it runs, it will look at the time the first one was originally sent, and then do it a percentage ahead or behind it. So it varies the time. Now you could call this Dad GPT if you want to. That's fine. But I didn't look at it as being threatened by technology. I looked at it as that there's these are ways for me to do things easier and better to focus on what matters. If I was to leave any tips or thoughts, final thoughts to go with that, it would be the toughest part of elevating and raising the bar is having the courage to do it. And we can go to all these events that we want to, and we can talk about all the things that how it should be, or how we've seen it, or what's important. But unless we're actually putting that into action, and being able to work in teams where we can depend on each other, and we have that psychological safety, we have that empowerment, and we're looking towards where we want to be to raise the bar, we need to have that courage to do that. And that's what I think is gonna differentiate us from them. I think that with the region, the opportunity that we have, and like we talked about the crossroads, that crossroad is right there in front of us, of where we will either succumb to the startup CEO who can't let go of decision making, hires product teams and doesn't let them do anything, hires designers and has to approve every decision. We risk falling into that trap. Or let people understand and realize, like you said earlier, why they hired us, why we're here, why our successes are with us. It didn't come from just one person. It came from working cohesively. So I think that that's something we need to really keep our eye on moving in the future.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Great point to end on.